He's recognized.
Thank you. H.R. 4150, as amended, the Department of Veterans Affairs Emergency Medical Staffing Recruitment and Retention Act would authorize VA upon written request to modify the hours of employment for full-time physicians to be more or less than 80 hours in a biweekly pay period as agreed to by the physician and hospital management. Earlier this year, VA testified that there are nearly 4,000 physician vacancies across the VA healthcare system. VA's ability to effectively recruit and retain high-quality medical professionals to care for our veterans is threatened by the nation's worsening physician shortage, which the Association of American Medical Colleges has stated could grow to just under 100,000 physicians by 2025. In light of this, it is imperative that we provide VA with every available tool to improve physician recruitment and make efficient use of the current physician workforce. Currently, VA's ability in both regards is hampered by a rigid 80-hour biweekly work schedule that is at odds with private sector industry standards. Typically, emergency room ER providers in non-VA hospitals across the country work flexible schedules to accommodate the irregular hours that emergency medicine demands. However, ER doctors in VA medical facilities are not afforded the opportunity to adapt the flexible schedules that their private sector colleagues enjoy. This bill would correct the discrepancies and improve VA's ability to recruit and retain ER physicians. H.R. 4150, as amended, which has my full support, originated as a VA legislative proposal and is sponsored by Congressman Dr. Raul Ruiz of California, who is an emergency medical physician. I am grateful to him for his efforts to address this issue, and I urge all of my colleagues to support this needed legislation. With that, I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Tennessee reserves the balance of his time. The gentleman from California is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield as much time as I might consume.
Gentleman from California is recognized.
I rise today in support of legislation H.R. 4150 as amended, introduced by my very good friend, the gentleman from California, Dr. Raul Ruiz. This legislation will improve the recruitment and retention of medical professionals at the Department of Veterans Affairs. H.R. 4150 as amended allows VA to arrange flexible physician work schedules to allow for the staffing and full implementation of a hospitalist physician system and to accommodate the unusual work schedule requirements for emergency medicine physicians. Now, we all recognize the need for flexibility in working the rigorous and irregular hours that are routinely required of emergency medicine doctors. Giving VA the ability to have flexible working hours that best suit the demand for delivering health care to the veterans who rely on those doctors just makes sense. The current 80-hour biweekly pay period limitation for these doctors creates challenges at the VA medical centers to adequately and sensibly staff the emergency rooms. Generally, most healthcare providers work a traditional 40-hour work week. However, for hospitalists and emergency room physicians, they may need to work more than that in a week to provide safe, quality health care to veterans who seek services at the VA. Ensuring access to care for veterans has been a major focus of this committee, and this bill will help to eliminate the access barrier and provide a more efficient and effective way to ensure that the emergency rooms across the VA healthcare system are ready to take care of our veterans. Importantly, the bill also includes protections for physicians by requiring their consent before they can move to the flexible schedule. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from California reserves the balance of his time. The gentleman from Tennessee is recognized.
I thank the Speaker, and I too am strongly in favor of this bill. Look, I don't know where Dr. Ruiz was about this 40-hour week, but I wish he had been around when I was in training and practice, because it would have been a joy to work just 40 hours. This particular bill allows the flexibility that every other hospital in the world has for staffing. And this is with the consent of the physicians and the hospital. It just makes sense, and I am so glad that Dr. Ruiz brought this up as a practicing ER physician himself. He knows about this, knows exactly what it is, and I appreciate Dr. Ruiz, you bringing this up and making the committee aware of it, and this will become a new law. And with that, I will reserve the balance of my time.
The gentleman from Tennessee reserves the balance of his time. Gentleman from California is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, at this time I would like to yield 3 minutes to my good friend and emergency room physician and a member of the Veterans Affairs Committee, the gentleman from California, the neighboring district that's next to mine, Dr. Ruiz.
From California is recognized for 3 minutes.
I'd like to thank the chairman and the ranking member. And yes, Mr. Chairman, I too had 120-hour work weeks and months, and I was the SCUT, of course, during my internships and residencies, so I understand the words that you have spoken. I rise in support of my bill, H.R. 4150, the Department of Veterans Affairs Emergency Medical Staffing Recruitment and Retention Act. The point is this, and it's very simple. The VA needs to provide high-quality care that is veteran-centered. That is why I introduced this bill, which works to address the difficulty of recruiting and retaining the best physicians to work within the VA healthcare system. The problem is that by law, the VA is beholden to the bureaucratic OPM's 80 biweekly requirement for full-time physicians. This does not fit with current practice of physicians in many specialties, including emergency medicine and hospital medicine. These specialties typically require more flexible, often irregular working hours. Some weeks they work less, some weeks they work the triple amount. But it needs to fit their schedule in order for them to provide the best care that they can for the patient. Also, for instance, in emergency departments, it has been studied that the most dangerous time for a patient is during shift changes when a patient's care is transferred to another doctor. It all depends on the quality of the transfer and discussing what happened and the follow-up that the second doctor is going to do. Therefore, emergency physicians prefer to work 12-hour shifts in order to minimize that transfer, and many emergency physicians work beyond their 12 hours in order to not transfer and just close the patient's case. So this bill would give the VA the flexibility it needs to schedule physicians in a manner similar to that seen in the private sector while remaining OPM compliant. This bill will provide VA medical centers with the ability to implement flexible physician work schedules that can accommodate hospitalists and emergency physician schedules and practices. Our veterans deserve the high-quality care. Attracting the best and brightest physicians to practice at the VA is a critical step in that direction. And like my other bills up for considerations today as part of other legislations on the floor, the Veterans Access to Speedy Review Act, the Veteran Survivor Claims Processing Automation Act, this bill works to ensure that the VA works for veterans, to make sure that it's about serving the veteran. Let's pass this bill, Mr. Speaker, and take another step towards providing the highest quality care for those who have given the ultimate sacrifice to our nation. I thank the chairman once again, and I thank the ranking member for your efforts in getting this to the floor today, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from California yields back the balance of his time. Gentleman from California reserves. Gentleman from Tennessee is recognized.
Reserve. Balance. I have no further speakers.
Gentleman from Tennessee reserves. Gentleman from California is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, I have no further speakers. I want to just add, before I close completely, how proud I am that we got this bill over the finish line, working together with the majority, working together with the stakeholders. I want to give special words of gratitude to the staff in my office and the staff on the Veterans Committee for working extra hours to get this bill done. This makes enormous sense to do, and it should have been done sooner, but I'm very glad we could get it done in this Congress. And Dr. Roy, I look very much forward to working with you in the next Congress to do similar bills in the future of greater magnitude. So, Mr. Speaker, I strongly support this legislation. I urge my colleagues to join me in passing H.R. 4150 as amended, and I yield back